Well, welcome. We're here today in the Energy HQ in Blackpool. And I've got with me Professor Darren Ansell from UCLan, who's Professor of Aerospace Engineering, and Will Madden, who is a Research Director from a local company, Morales. And we're going to be talking about the future of flight, the future of transport. So I remember back to my younger days and used to see these comic strips of people whizzing round on what are now called unmanned aerial vehicles. So it's going to be a really exciting discussion. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask our two speakers today to tell me a little bit about their role, their job, what they're doing and the organisation they work for. Just a quick one. So Professor Ansell first.
Thanks. Afternoon everyone. So yeah, my name's Darren Ansell. I'm a Professor of Aerospace Engineering at the University of Central Lancashire. I've been there for about 9 years now. Used to work in the aerospace industry before that. And like Matt said, I've done a lot of work on some of these novel aircraft projects, things like UAVs, and helping them get developed over the years. At the university, like most universities, we sort of have three main threads to what we do. We have our teaching activities, our research, and what we call our knowledge transfer, which is essentially working with businesses and companies and helping them develop new products, for example. So I spend most of my time now on the sort of research and that knowledge transfer type activity.
Yeah, very good. And Will, what about what's happening at Morales?
Well, so Morales is a small, medium enterprise based in Lancaster, and we're interested in several areas all around logistics and transport. Some of it is in similarly drone-related work. Some of it is just HGV-related work, but the majority of it is electric vehicle-related work. So it's all very moving forward into the future kind of work.
Good stuff, and you got the pun in there as well at the same time. so we've got those two key vectors, haven't we? We've got electric vehicles or vehicles, and we've got kind of flight, and in particular sort of UAVs, which is actually unmanned aerial vehicles. Now, the government's just brought out a future transport document. I'm sure you're kind of familiar with that, and it's looking at what are going to be the future energy sources, the energy vectors. What are the issues around connectivity? Because there's an expectation nowadays that you'll be able to easily transition from one transport mode to another. What's the infrastructure requirements? If we're going to move towards electric vehicles, are we going to be able to charge them? And hopefully we'll not be queuing up like we are at the moment for petrol. And there's this whole debate around what they call autonomous. Are you going to sit in a car that's driven by AI or a machine, or are you going to have vehicles whizzing around, dropping goods off, etc.? So it's really exciting. It's about the future, and it's about what new business models might arise from all this technology. So in terms of drones or UAVs, just tell me a little bit more about what they are, Darren, and how they might manifest themselves. What timescales are we talking about?
Okay, so the idea of a UAV or a drone, and the terms are often interchanged. So it's essentially an aircraft that doesn't have a pilot on board, and that's the key difference. So you can often think of these things as being remotely controlled in some way. And they are around today. Most people are familiar with the idea of something like a small quadcopter being used in a town or a city doing some kind of photographing or videoing type task. But it's worth thinking about how that's changing. So these UAVs or drones are getting larger, and people are wanting to do more and more things with them. So people are looking at, say, maybe using them for transporting goods, so moving things off the road and putting them in the air. Ultimately transporting people as well, which is an interesting topic to have a talk about, and all the implications around that. And really there's quite a few challenges around that as well. So it's not just about the actual new aircraft themselves, it's about all the regulatory environment that's needed to enable that, and the infrastructure that you're going to need as well to support it, and that'll apply on the land as well for electric cars as well.
Yeah, I mean, and in fact, that's a great segue into, what's the situation with vehicles, and particularly, we're looking at electrification of a lot of these modes of transport.
I think you're right. I think we are looking at electrification is the natural progression. It moves, in theory, it moves to net zero. Whether it does or not is a different matter, because how the electricity is generated is another question completely.
Absolutely.
But we are moving in that direction. And for electric vehicles, I've driven an electric vehicle for 3 years now. I've loved it. It's really good fun. But the choice I had 3 years ago was about 3 cars. And now they're suddenly everywhere. Today I had to queue to charge for the first time ever. So it really is starting to get there. But it also shows that actually the infrastructure is the important thing that now needs the investment in and now needs to be planned correctly. And I think you're right, that extends over both the drone airspace and the ground space transport.
So I guess one of the things a lot of viewers will be thinking about is, okay, so what specialisations do we have locally? What have we got at UCLan? What have we got at Morales? What have we got in Lancashire that we can really kind of hang a story around and say this is what we're good at and this is how we're going to benefit? Yeah. Darren?
Well, in the air domain, there's a clear track record for aerospace in Lancashire. It's the largest aerospace cluster in the UK, so it's got nearly all the major players are in this region, and it's got a long heritage. There's companies like BAE Systems and Airbus that have been operating locally, and it's been there's been decades of new aircraft being developed in this region. And of course, all those aerospace primes have had all the supply chain here as well.
Yeah, of course.
So there's so many skills and sector knowledge in this region that it's really in a great opportunity to start thinking about these new emerging aviation markets and these new types of vehicles that are coming out.
Darren, would there be a particular sort of niche or segment there that we could focus on in Lancashire?
Yeah, I actually think the unmanned aircraft sector is really sort of accessible. I think that there's bigger challenges with like personalised transportation aircraft. They're going to take a lot longer to develop, and the regulatory environment around that is quite difficult. But I can see many of the aerospace companies in the region, and even companies that are not currently in the aerospace sector, that potentially could be interested. They could apply their skills and products into the unmanned aircraft market.
And I guess when you think about a UAV, an unmanned vehicle, in essence, it's a platform that's carrying data and communicating. And we've heard this week the fantastic news about the National Cyber Force. I guess there's some crossover there. There's some opportunities there.
Yeah. That's it. It's not just about photography. Most people think drones are for sort of surveillance, taking pictures. Yeah. But of course, they can be carrying any kind of sensor.
Exactly.
So they could be looking at air quality. We've just invested in a drone at the university which carries a radar, a ground penetrating radar. So we can actually do like underground surveys from the air now, which is quite a novel application for a drone. And then of course there's all sorts of different use cases when you think about all the different sectors that could benefit from a drone. So if you think about health and medical care, transporting lab samples around, there's been use cases studied in looking at hospitals in London and how drones would be really beneficial in connecting those together to speed up laboratory test samples moving from one lab to another. It can take a few minutes in the air, and it take an hour on the ground, for example. And
so they're kind of critical categories, aren't they? That where time and is important. What about the infrastructure for electric vehicles? What sort of projects are you bringing forward at Morales around that?
So Morales, we have our own piece of software which is called Fuse, which is a electric vehicle charging platform. I say that's it, put simply. We've added in many different extra capabilities, including going as far as routing the electric vehicles for sort of commercial vehicles and commercial enterprises, all to try and assist this transition away from internal combustion engines all the way to, weirdly, I call them dinosaur juice vehicles. Don't know why. But anyway, so we're working on that kind of infrastructure changes, and we're also doing quite a lot of work about where to place these charge points, because that's quite important too. Aside from that, we support, there's a local not-for-profit cooperative in Lancaster, originally started in Lancaster, that covers Lancashire and Cumbria, called Charge My Street, that places community-based, and we're supporting those through the application of our software, basically. So all of these things are moving it forward, and one of the things that Darren rightly picked up on, the Northwest is an amazing area for a test bed of things, because in the Northwest you've got very rural areas, you've got the sea, you've also got very big metropolitan areas as well. It's a fantastic test bed area.
And am I right in thinking you're doing some stuff around airspace management and flight as well?
Yeah, one of our other projects, aside from the electric vehicles, is working on drone routing, or UAV routing, where we're essentially automating where they have to go to avoid certain aerospace restrictions. It's how I met Darren before. So,
and could that extend to that kind of, I mentioned the government report looked at things like connectivity. So that idea that, you land in a conventional plane and then something's going to take you from one city hub to another, and then you're going to connect with another mode of transport. Is that sort of digital connectivity and management of transport modes?
I think the future for that is amazing. We can do some really genuinely interesting things. I'm a big fan of data, and with all this data, we can do some really exciting things. I mean, we're walking down a path towards autonomous vehicles, which are a fantastic step forward. We're not there yet, but weirdly, we're not there not because of the vehicles themselves. They're fine, they work. What we're not there is the humans that will interact with them. Most humans are a little bit selfish, a little bit. And if you're faced at a junction with an autonomous vehicle that you know will behave properly to avoid an accident, would you jump the lights? Would you do these things? And that's all the things the autonomous vehicles have to take into account at the moment. Whereas if everything was autonomous, we wouldn't have to worry about them.
It's interesting though, that new emerging category of what they call the urban air mobility platforms, which does include things like future flying taxis, but also this idea that you perhaps don't have to go to an airport anymore to take a flight.
Right. That's interesting.
These new aircraft type, like the vertical takeoff aircraft, which then transition into forward flight and then land vertically as well, they can land in a city environment, in a space, which could then be, well, you can easily connect up an electric vehicle in that sort of environment as well.
So I guess the question to both of you then is around, we've got some of the capabilities, there's some opportunities out there, there's a market. How do we actually get to the point where the Lancashire economy starts to benefit? Is there something that can trigger that? Is there some project that you see that can kind of take that next step where we can create jobs, we can generate economic benefit?
Yeah, we've been working on a European project called Aerial Uptake, which has been quite an eye-opener really, because we've been able to visit other European regions and look at how they are promoting drone uptake in their regions. So it's all about sharing best practice and learning from them. And two of the places we've visited, the Netherlands and Sweden, have drone innovation zones or clusters where they've perhaps taken an old military airfield, repurposed it as an innovation park and used that to help develop, really push that sector. And it's an idea we've been floating around in circles in Lancashire for a while now. At the university, we've running two projects at the moment. One of them is a growth deal project, which has allowed us to invest in capital equipment to help Lancashire-based businesses to innovate new technology in the drone sector, and also a European-funded project, which is just starting now, which runs for 2 years, which allows the university to help companies take new products to market. And again, that's focused at this unmanned and drone sector as well.
That's absolutely brilliant. So in a way, we've got a starting point. We've got a bit of a roadmap to take us forward. And we've got all the sort of resources to hand. You mentioned BAE Systems. We've got the skills out there and the supply chain. There isn't as much automotive compared to the West Midlands
No.
here in Lancashire, but there's a lot of transferable technologies.
I think one of the key things and one of the reasons we're based up here is it's a fantastic place to live. Lancashire is the best place to live. Don't care what Yorkshire people say. But one of the key things for us is that we're keen to find very innovative, technologically driven people.
Yeah.
And that is in abundance in the north, particularly in Lancashire. I mean, we've got lots of, there's Lancaster University, there's UCLan, there's the University of Cumbria as well that's also based there. There are lots of higher education establishments that are pushing these boundaries of...
Well, Morales grew out of a very strong digital cluster, didn't it? And so that digital piece and the kind of deep tech that comes from the universities with sensors and quantum, some of which we've heard about this week, put all that together, you have a very powerful,
Absolutely.
Very powerful
And that's, Lancashire, particularly Lancaster, where we're based, there's an absolute hub of innovation going on at the moment. And actually, we just need to keep that going. And it's just innovation funding and ideas that generate all of that, and that's the key.
And you've both, particularly Morales, you've been very successful in tapping into funds from Innovate UK, and they've been very supportive.
Yeah, the government through various granting fund bodies that we've been very successful, and without it we wouldn't be where we are. We now have to capitalise on it, as that's the sort of second phase of the innovation, is that you actually have to make something from it, and we're in the process of doing that. It's really exciting times for us and for Lancashire, so yeah.
That's good stuff. So you're working with the other universities as well?
We always collaborate, where we can. We've innovated on drones in the past, where we've worked with the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, part of the University of Sheffield. We've even built drones with advanced materials like graphene, where we've worked with the Graphene Institute in Manchester.
Yeah, of course.
So wherever we can, we like to do that.
Because I guess really, and you mentioned before, BAE Systems is really strong, and it's one of the biggest, it is the biggest cluster actually of that kind of technology in the UK. So this is what we're trying to develop here in Lancashire is at the very least a northwest resource. So if you like, tapping into those other institutions is only going to benefit the whole economy.
Well, that's it. If we could create an autonomous vehicle cluster, it'd be tremendous for the area, because you'd have your test facilities, you'd have the universities providing support, we could have the airspace, because the likes of BAE Systems control big sectors of airspace, and they have the experience of evaluating prototype aircraft in that space as well.
And it would bring together those innovative new companies as well. It would just throw everything together.
And it's also, there's just due to be released is a Northwest space sector strategy. And of course, when you think about data and the management of airspace, if you like, you're talking between satellites, UAVs, and ground stations, and it's all about applications around that technology. So I think we may have some questions from the floor.
Yes, thank you, Matt. So, question that's come in: do you think this sector is facing a skills shortage like other sectors, or are you fine with attracting people, and is there a preferred path for people who want to come to the industry to go?
I think I'm going to give that. Darren's going to draw the short straw, not least because he's from a university, so he should be generating all these skills. But over to you, Dan.
Yeah, so we launched an aerospace engineering course in 2015, and it's quickly become our largest engineering course. It's had a lot of demand, and we've tried to design it to have sort of a very broad coverage of aerospace, and we're finding our graduates are going to all different sectors in the industry, but you really do need all the engineering disciplines in electric vehicles. You need your software engineers, you need your mechanical engineers. I'm sure you know all the skills that are needed there, and I think there is a good supply of graduates that are emerging now.
I think so. I mean, we're a software firm more than a hardware firm, so the people we're after are your software engineers. And there is a shortage of software engineers, and we are We're having to, the whole COVID effect has had an interesting effect on the market. We're kind of unique as a company in the sense that we're not based at an office. We have an office and I work from it, but we have people based in Swindon. It's not Lancashire, but you know.
We'll let you off.
Yeah, we'll let them off. It's been useful because we've been accepting of a work environment where you don't have to be there. But at the same time, we're also competing against London firms now that have gone, we don't have to have people in the office. So people that were previously happy to work in Lancashire are now thinking, can earn more money working for a London firm now.
Right, that's an interesting flip of that debate.
Yeah.
I think one of the really important things is that kind of retention story. You know, when we've got 4 universities, if you include Cumbria, which has a Lancashire base, then if we're generating those graduates, if we're developing these high-tech clusters of companies, they've got a route to kind of stay in the area, and I think that's a really important thing we need to get a grip on.
Yeah.
Great, thanks for that. Another question that's come in: if I was a small business that wanted to get into this market, if I had a potential product, are there any ways you can recommend getting in front of people or accessing support to get into the sector?
I'll quite happily answer that one to the start. Honestly, the sort of Innovate UK approaches are brilliant. They're matched funding, so they'll typically, if you're a small to medium enterprise, which if you're just starting out, you will be, they'll give you 70% of the grant, which means you have to commit 30%, but that's okay because it's your project and you own all the IP at the end. And it's a really good way of getting into this. They'll have regular competitions over different sectors, so just look on the internet for Innovate UK and see what competitions are available. Also, don't be afraid of introducing yourself to other businesses. We're always keen to innovate with people, and so that's most companies that are trying to break new areas are also very keen on innovation and working together. So.
I think that's a really good point. I think most entrepreneurs I've met are really keen to help other entrepreneurs, so I think tap into that SME base. Darren?
Yeah, just I mentioned earlier about the sort of business support programs that universities do as well. So particularly in this area, we have a number of these kind of programs where you can get free support from the university to help you help you develop your product and take it to market. And there's a lot of those schemes about, so really have a look on the websites of all the universities in the region, because they're all running different things, and there's normally a business support section on there somewhere that describes all the different types of help that you can get.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think if you think of a university and a small company like Morales, being able to tap into the laboratories, in effect it's like having a huge R&D department sat on your doorstep. So it's finding your way around universities, and that's where you need the help.
I think also, I'm sure all universities do it, but the master students are desperate for projects, real-life projects, and it's a great way of getting potential employees of the futures and also people to work on what you're doing now. It's a great way forward.
Okay, any further questions?
Yes, we have. Thinking forward, what are, say, 5 job titles of the future relating to your sectors?
Wow, we can have a bit of fun with that one, I think. Will, go on. You.
Well, I was just going with ruler of the world, but I'm not sure that actually exists. But let me think about it for a bit. Most of what we do is software related, so they're all sort of software related things. I'm going to stick with ruler of the world, I think. Yeah, Darren.
Well, to be quite honest, with all this talk about AI and AI making decisions in an ethical way, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a whole new branch of lawyers coming out looking at the law around artificial intelligence. So maybe there's a role for an AI ethics engineer as well that specialises in developing that kind of software, maybe.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. You know, you're always a bit of a worry when lawyers are crawling all over these projects.
I think just one other one. I think that actually testing is going to have there's going to be a whole new series of testing, because for a lot of the automated stuff, how do you test this? Do you send an automated vehicle on a driving test? So there's going to be something new there. I'm not sure what it is, but something.
Brilliant.
People have said that Lancashire is a great place for tech, particularly because costs are so low up here. Have you found that those cost differentials help with your business?
I don't know is genuinely the honest answer to that, because I've always worked out of Lancaster. So I don't know what the differential is. I think we have noticed since COVID has happened that the cost of engineers and software designers has gone up. So probably we were in a little bit of a lower paid bubble, but I think that's disappearing now, and I think it's actually equating. And I don't think it makes that much of a difference. I think the innovation drives the future rather than...
I think there's also those kind of lifestyle choices, isn't there? I mean, kind of living in the centre of London can be a really difficult challenge, or you know, it's almost as if the southeast of England is overheated in some ways, and so you know, if your costs of living etc. are lower and the wage levels are at a reasonable level, and what do you think, Dan?
Yeah, it used to be a big barrier, particularly when we were trying to recruit staff, because to move to the north of the country would cost, you know, probably cost them in their salaries. But we haven't seen that so much, and now, especially because we've all got used to this sort of blended way of working because of the pandemic, you don't need to be in your office 5 days a week anymore. You know, you can, and that opens up a lot more opportunities for people to work in different places, I think, as well.
Brilliant.
Great. The final question of Lancashire Innovation Festival 2021. Will, who is the best director at Morales?
Who's the best director at Morales? Okay, so
I think we all know what the answer is.
I'm assuming this came in from Martin, in which case I'll have to say Martin is obviously the best director at Morales, second only to myself.
Right, I was kind of expecting this question to come through. It had to be a Will Madden type, Madden type question. Okay, I'm going to kind of close the session, but to some extent kind of close off this week, which has been absolutely fantastic, really exciting. Second year of the Lancashire Innovation Festival. It gets better and better. So really, just big thanks for what everybody's done to put this together, in particular the Lancashire Innovation Board, which involves some of the key movers and shakers in Lancashire. And I have to say a thanks to Dan Knowles, who I know has put a huge amount of effort into this, and the rest of the team behind this. So thank you very much.